Qué, hi, bonjour, bienvenue, je suis... Oh, vous répondez! So beautiful. So I'll do the intro in French, but then we'll take time to settle everything for Katherena, because I have some things to tell you. For the last time today, you'll hear them. So my name is Vanessa Bell, and I will be hosting this discussion. I am overjoyed and stressed and more stressed, because I do fangirl this amazing woman by my side. But first of all, let me tell you, bienvenue à la Maison de la littérature sur la grande scène Hydro-Québec. Cette activité est présentée en codiffusion avec HighWater, bien sûr, et la Maison de la littérature dans le cadre du 14e Salon du livre des Premières Nations. Une présentation d'Hydro-Québec, quelle surprise à nouveau. Réalisée par HighWater, l'édition 2025 est rendue possible grâce à l'appui financier des partenaires suivants: Desjardins, Énergex, Énergie renouvelable, OKT-LA, Weekend 91,9 FM, le Conseil des arts du Canada, le gouvernement du Canada, le gouvernement du Québec, la SODEC, la Ville de Québec, l'Organisation internationale de la francophonie et Wendake, bien sûr. Yay! Wendake! Yay! Alors, maintenant que cela est derrière nous, now that this is behind us, maybe some few words about you, Katherena. First of all, well, welcome. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. Merci. It's a pleasure.
We're getting there. We should have get that drink maybe before, so you could have performed everything in French.
We should just gotten liquored.
Yeah.
Come up here. Yeah.
Because we were just discussing how language sometimes just, it's easier with just one beer. So, Katherena Vermette is a Michif Red River Métis writer from Treaty 1 territory, the heart of the Métis Nation in Winnipeg, Manitoba. She was born in Winnipeg. Her Michif roots on her parental side run deep in Saint Boniface, Saint Norbert, and beyond. And there's so many words and so many things to be said about your work, but I'll just say that in 2013, your first book, North End Love Songs, won the Governor General Literary Award for Poetry, and since then, you have been working really fast and hard with 4 novels, 3 collections of poetry, work for children, movie, and being on stage. Because yesterday you were just saying that you thought being a writer would be people just leave you alone and you go do your things, but then you have to suffer and be on stage.
Nice?
It would be very nice.
Wouldn't that be nice if you just got to hole up into rooms? But yeah, you have to keep doing this and getting up on stage.
So thank you for forcing us to be on stage. The last line of the bio is really good, and I stole it to Rachel McCrum that was doing That's so good. So we're just stealing everything. That's very settler things to be doing. But the bio, your last line says that you live with your family in a cranky old house within skipping distance of the temperamental Red River. Oui. And I love just that you are introducing the Red River as a person within your bio. And I don't have a question, but I was curious about this, how that line just get into it.
It just gets in there, hey? I live in Winnipeg, a very river city, and the Red River is so prominent and I've always lived kind of in and around Red River. I've been in some sort of arm's length to it, and now I'm just in a beautiful, very cranky, sometimes not even beautiful house that is half a block away. So I feel like I have arrived. It's it's really like my home, and I get to cross the river, be near the river every day. So yeah, she is a part of me.
And it is really beautiful because you can feel in this new collection of poetry, Procession, which is the book we will be talking about today. You can feel that you have arrived. Indeed, this is really strong in it. And there's just this first line. You write, for those who came before and those who come after. And I really like how you put that sentence at present time. So everything is just kind of an action or just the same. And I feel like this book is indeed the action of holding space. And I was curious on how you feel like writing this book hold space, and what for? Because I've got answers, but yours are probably better.
Or mine are one answer of many, I'm sure. This really feels like, poetry always feels like it collects something for me. I love the idea of poetry collection, because it's like you're collecting these poems, and poems tend to kind of follow me while I'm doing all the other things. I love novels and children's stuff, but the poems are more sincerely me and talking about some truth. Sometimes, just bullshit like all writing is, but it feels like a truth of something. And this is, my last book of poems was 2018, and before that I think it was 2012 is when it came out. That was my first book. So it always feels like this, almost like 6 years, and like from then it's like 7 years. So yeah, it's kind of like this archive of things. In the last, like, since 2018, a lot of shit's gone down. I'm sweary today, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna put that out there. It's just the S-bomb, it's fine. We won't get any more salacious than that. So since 2018, I feel like my world has changed, as all of our worlds has changed, like a million times over. A lot of these poems were born in the early days of the pandemic, when I had 2 young kids at home. My son was born 5 days before lockdown. So I was very much in this space of life and literal death everywhere. At the same time, in those few months after that, I lost a lot of friends through the many epidemics, not only the pandemic, but there was a huge fentanyl crisis that happened in Winnipeg. And some very good people were lost in that over the last 2020 and 2021, just the devastation of our services. So it felt like I was very much in that middle-aged space of being in between things at all times. And then there's this teaching from where I come from. It's an Anishinaabe teaching, but I know it comes from other places, and it's the teaching is that we are only here to honor those who come before and make space for those who come after. And so that just became like the central tenet to all of this seemingly displaced collection of things, because that's honestly, what we're here for. And thinking that really reduces life to its very basics.
Speaking about arriving, or at least arriving to this kind of middle time of the life, I don't know. Yesterday you were in an interview with Mathieu Tétrault, and then he said that writing about your story is also a way to give back knowledge to those who came before, and I thought that was also very interesting. And that's something we don't, in the French community, we don't hear much often about this idea of rewriting the story for those who came before, get acknowledgement, to say. And I would love, we spoke about that, if you could read maybe the poem on page 74.
74.
Is it too soon yet?
Is it too soon?
It's the vulnerable poem. Probably while you get prepared, I can maybe talk about my experience of this poem, because this collection is very powerful in so many ways. It's funny. First of all, it's really funny. Like, I laughed.
Thank you.
Yes.
I never get to be funny.
Well, you were funny to me.
I'm trying really hard to be funny. It's really important to me that I'm funny.
You are, but also it's super deep, and it has so many knowledge in a philosophical way. It's very beautiful. And then I got to this point, this poem, and I cried hard. And I'm not a good crier, so like I was surprised by myself, and I just thought, I wish at some point I will get there as a writer at this point of writing that kind of things about myself. And it made me felt like tenderness towards you, I suppose.
Thank you. I'm glad that was the response, because this poem feels very vulnerable to me, as I was saying. And I like how you just you're making me get it over with before anything else happens. Yeah, this is the poem. Okay, it's called Things You Can Say About Me When I'm Dead. So that pretty much is what it's about. And it's a list poem. a la Billy Ray Belcourt. You know Billy Ray Belcourt? Beautiful. I love his list poems, and I really took that to heart in some of these, because I think we should all write list poems. It takes the pressure off of having to make cohesive sense. Things you can say about me when I'm dead. Really did stick her feet in a lot of oceans. No euphemism. Had a lot of kids, 4. Loved them fiercely, mama bear-like. Had magic with a K, and magic, really did. Was blessed, knew it. Made up stories in her head. Some amused her, some healed things. Wrote them down. Others read them. She hopes they were maybe amused, healed. Really sucked at being a good wife. Secretly, not so secretly, wanted a good wife of her own. Was suspicious of actual existence of said good wife. Found her purpose relatively early, tried to outrun it, smoke it out, drowned it. Always found her, though. Really liked being alone, was always scurrying off away from parties, friends, events, husbands. Held trauma, strength, joy, was rather hyper-independent, at times a complete energy vampire. Sometimes took too much, sometimes gave too much, emotionally and in narrative. If she hurt you, she hopes you can forgive her. If you hurt her, know she has forgiven you. Accept you. Fuck you. Oh, there is that poem. Climbed a lot of mountains, literal and figuratively. Okay, only a moderate amount of mountains, and most labeled easy. Was so often lonely, sad, grateful, gleeful. Struggled with self-care, self-love, self-esteem. All the selves struggled inside her, fought like family at dinner, bickering, feeding, loving, indifferent, ignoring one another, descending into silence as they digested. Learned life really got going when she embraced the contradiction of it all. Strove to honor those who came before, make space for those who come after, be a good ancestor, be a good kid. Failed a lot, tried again, still rose, if you will. Journeyed far, literally and figuratively. Was constant in her heart, if never in her mind. If she loved you, she still loves you. Accept you. Fuck you. Her grandmothers were always with her every day. She was absolutely terrified all of the time, did it anyway.
There's a silence to behold there. It's beautiful.
It's funny because I forgot about some of the stuff in that poem until I got to it. And it's like, oh yeah, this. Oh shit.
Talking about still arriving this moment in midlife where like you are on the edge of, you still have the grandmothers looking at you, but then you're also the mom and the grandmom, and you are just aging, just shifting. And I was curious about how writing this specific or this kind of poem changes you. Because I feel like you cannot write this and still be the same after writing it or reading it to someone aloud.
I mean, it's true. I think about, and it's funny, I have another poem in my last collection of poetry called Bury Me at Batoche. And so I seem to, there's a little goth girl inside of me who's just, planned her whole funeral. And is kind of looking forward to it, just for the colors and stuff. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. No, I think there's something. I think I spent a lot of time in my life not really liking my life. Like there was always some pain or some grief to get over or something or some heartbreak or something, And I've kind of comes a point and I don't know if this is for everybody's experience, but my experience where I just wanted to be happy. I was really like, and this feels like a midlife thing. I have all my friends are becoming old people. I don't know, except me, obviously. And we're all talking, everyone's talking about perimenopause all the time. We're all obsessed with talking about the 90s and telling the young ones how it really was. Remember back in my day. And there's something really beautiful about that. And I feel like we're all kind of in this point of just like, fuck it, let's be happy. Let's enjoy this. We've come so far. We've gone like through all of this stuff. And in that happiness, it's just like you don't fear the end of it anymore because we're not at the end, thank goodness. But like it's okay. Everything is kind of coming into a peace. Not everything, but there's moments of peace and there's moments of those glimpses. I don't think we can theoretically stay in happiness forever, but I think we can find ease. Yeah.
Because there's this thing in the title, Procession, that could be very heavy, but it felt more like I only have the Norwegian word in my fanfare. Yeah. How do you say that in English? Fanfare. Yeah.
Fanfare.
Yeah, that's what I felt
Fanfare.
reading. Yeah.
Procession. Yeah,
Yes,
well,
that's
procession
what
is
I
such a
felt reading your
weird
book.
word because you think of it as funeral. But procession is like every single life event has a procession. Wedding procession, graduation procession. There is no birth procession, but I think there should be. Some sort of a parade, just holding the baby up while the person who birthed it gets to rest. Just like let's go parade. But it's also, I like the word because I get fixated on words, hey. So procession became that word because it's process. Yeah, exactly. And poetry to me feels like very akin to that idea of process, and where my writing comes from, this idea of poetry where I get to just play. And that's where all of my process comes from. So procession just feels like and process is such an active word, and procession is like a super active word. Yeah.
I'm really happy you're opening that door for me because, of course, the process was in it and we could feel it. And one of the way we could feel it is in that section called photography. And everything about procession, and then the positive and negative space. And there's this poem where you say negative space, narrative, creation. I think it was really interesting the way you invited yourself and all the people in the frame with you with this parade maybe. And again, the image create relation between past and present and future. And yesterday you were talking about fragments and stories and photos and poems, and I feel all this is all related. So I don't know, it felt like maybe like bodies and photos were a vessel for homeland and life in this part. So I was curious if you could just like talk about this specific space, because all of it is very like it's written the way you will expect a poem to be written. But then yesterday you said, yeah, I do have fun playing with the white spaces. And when you talked about joy and just playing, I feel like this section is about that.
It is playing, yeah. And that's why I forget what it's called when you play, there's a fancy word in poetry, but I feel like every collection has I play with one of those poems and I make it a shape, or that one, it's just kind of this scatter, almost confetti. Yeah, maybe it's confetti. And I really love, one thing I have in my poems, I tend to have fun with pictures, because I do think poems are very much more so than prose, because prose always involves activity, but poems almost don't, especially the image-heavy postmodern kind of poems that we know. It's a snapshot. It's a something. It's very akin to photographs. It leaves so much out. Like in the writing of a poem, you're constantly paring down and polishing to almost like you're editing. I always think of it like editing your feelings, you know, because it's like they're all jumbled and then you're putting them through this machine until they look pretty. Or at least you like them and can tolerate them in some way. And that's also what photographs are. Like they're like this moment. And even when they're imperfect, like I'm thinking of older photographs. The photographs I describe in the book are family photographs we have from the 20s and 30s and into the 50s. And those are like you took a picture, you didn't know what it was, you got it developed, you went, oh shit, that's what happened. But they're perfect, you know, particularly when they're blurry, particularly when someone's eyes are closed, or, you know, those imperfections kind of, and I remember as a kid, and these poems, or these pictures in this book especially, but also like the poem when, back in the 90s, when you would develop pictures with your friends, you would stare at them forever. And you'd like, all of those images were just like embedded on your skull. And you'd laugh at them forever and pass them around. They get all gritty on the corners. It was so tactile. And that's what it feels like with these poems or these pictures, like you wouldn't have them any other way. That's how you know that moment. But that was a tiny, brief second of everything that happened in that moment to make that moment. So it's just, I don't know.
So many things I want to ask at the same time. And I'm seeing Julia there, and I know she has questions, very smart questions about photos. And I'm not allowed to give the mic, but do you want to tell me a question? I know you do have a very good question about photos. Like, it can't be. Okay, I have the mic, so I will just decide to do this, and maybe I will never host again.
This is very generous, Vanessa. No, the Carry memory section for people who've read Procession, the descriptions of the photographs are amazing. But I was curious, were these photographs that were in a shoebox under a bed? Were these ones that were around the house? When you decided to do the section of Carry memory, where were those photographs located, and what was it like to spend time translating photographs into poems in this way?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no.
Sorry.
They are very real photographs, and it's funny to me because I described the photographs in poems. And I think my original intention was to also include the poems, but then we kind of forgot about that. And by the time I remembered, you know, printing costs being what they are, they said, no, we can't do that. I'm like, oh, damn. Okay, well, they'll just have to sit on their own. It's a real life box of photos that belonged to my uncle. So my uncle has since passed, but he lived in my grandparents' house, like the house they built kind of thing. And so there was this collection of family photos, mostly taken by my grandmother, who passed when I was 13, so many, many moons ago. But also it was all these wild photos from like the 20s and 30s. And he was super, super precious about them. Like I could, you know, look at them, but I couldn't take them. So I took pictures of them on my phone, and I actually went to, I had a meeting with a professor of photography at University of Manitoba, and she was talking about, you know, matrilineal culture and just like how kind of the curation of the photos was a matriarch responsibility. And I really, you know, learned a lot of, then I was looking at them again through the eyes of my grandmother and how she really wanted to craft this idea of her family, and not only her family, but her community and her extended family and Michif people as a whole. You know, she wanted us to be, and her sons, and to be successful and to achieve in the world, in a world that has at that time really excluded them. So just looking at these photos of you know, birthday parties and like, it's not extravagance, but to her it would have been seen as like them succeeding. Was really beautiful to look at. And the professor was actually really, really excited and thought we should get them into the museum because there's actually not a lot of photographs around Michif folks, particularly in the 20s and 30s. And a lot of those people would have been in road allowance communities and different kind of communities, just you know, history, points of history. But the funny thing is, when my uncle passed, my cousin took possession of those. She inherited those. And she knows I want them. And she won't give them to me. And she's like, no, I'm going to keep them. They're mine. And I'm like, but they can go in a museum. And she's like, how much are they going to pay us? And I'm like, why do you get, it's a museum. We want to be in the museum. You just like, they're in your basement. Give them to the museum. So now it's become this thing, which I love. She's totally going to break at any time now. But no, but it's just so funny that we all love these. Like, they're such artifacts, you know? And in them, my bragging rights, the one thing my uncle did sneak to me was a tin print. They had tin prints in this frickin' treasure. And it was, Professor Close estimated it was probably from 1850s, 1860s. Like, dude had a sash. It was great. So that I have a few.
Maybe you would read her note or her story notes, because I feel like this reflects everything you've said about like how the women are in charge of telling the stories or telling their stories to the others.
Yeah, this is definitely, like, this is exactly the notes from that meeting with Dr. Close. And it's this is how a poet takes notes when when an academic starts talking. That's the subheading of this poem. Her story, notes. Carry memory. Photos frame identity. Learn how to read them. Visual literacy. Photography as a social practice, literal self-preservation. Negative/space, narrative/creation. Family photo albums tended to be tended by the matriarchs, created by. Established her identity, curated her own narrative, highly edited, controlled, sometimes the only control. How she understood her experience in the world. How else would she have spoken to you, to anyone, about her life, her family? Made her own story, not her own.
This line when you write, sometimes the only control, how she understood her experience in the world. There's something in the structure of this book that is very impressive in the way that every poem are their own, but they are also like unfolding around themselves. And then the more you go further in the book, it feels like every poem unfolds the one before. So then you have to go back, and there's a very smart game there. Maybe it wasn't meant to, but there's a very smart game there. And when you wrote this, it made me think of the language itself. When you write, the language came before the world, called it, flowed within you, calling up on you. Even when I don't understand, especially then. And so that's a very long loop. We're getting into language, so of course that could be like a 3 hours discussion. Sure. So maybe to bring a little more line in that, I was curious well, maybe you can just tell those beautiful people in the audience about Michif. What is Michif and how it came to be a language of his own, and then maybe we go back to this, even when I don't understand, especially then.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first poems of the book is kind of this introduction, this introducing and welcoming, and they were originally kind of planned as like welcoming for my new babies, welcoming them into the world, and through them, my two youngest children, their languages, their traditional languages are Anishinaabe, and Michif. Michif comes from my family. So Michif is, and Matthew yesterday had the perfect definition. Where is he?
He's not there, but I do have the notes from yesterday.
Oh, you do?
Was it about like it comes from French and English, and then there's the back.
MétisNation.ca. There we go. Michif is the Métis themselves. Métis, we're our First Nation. We are post-contact First Nation, in that we are kind of a mashing of different nations put together due to many, many circumstances. So in a sense, I always say that as the preamble too. So in a sense, we are French and European fur traders and indigenous mothers, but that was the very beginning of something that many, many generations of those children making more children over a couple hundred years. Then you get Métis people. So it's not just both. It's not an either or. It's not just a pure mixing. There's almost this newness, and because of displacement and dispossession and all the slaughter that happened on this continent, there's actually quite a few First Nations that are called post-contact nations or Creole nations, or kind of nations that came together and made something new because of all of the things that were happening. So that's always my long-winded way of saying, like, we're not just, so Métis, meaning mixed, which is why many of us have adopted the more, our own word for ourselves, which is Michif. And Michif comes from the Michif language, which also is a composite of French and some English and Anishinaabemowin and Neheya or Inanuan, which are Cree languages. There's a whole bunch of mixes in there. And it was a trading language that kind of like picked up words here and there. And there is a structure to it. There is some sort of sense to it. And there's definite rules, but it's also, and I say that, but I always think the language is like, hey, I like that word. Here, we'll use that.
Especially as a poet, right?
Yeah, it was a good word. And I mean, like I grew up thinking I was speaking French, or my family was speaking French, like a Franco-Manitoban French, which arguably no one thinks is French. It's real French, it swears. Our accent is just weird. But my family also had, my uncle actually, who owned the photographs, was saying that it's actually Michif that we were speaking, but all these words that they considered like slang were indigenous words. They're for Anishinaabemowin or Cree words. And we didn't even know, like, it was just how it was.
So now you get a sense of what is Michif, because I feel like we have to establish that in order to go further in your text, or especially in the first part of this book that has many words that comes from different indigenous languages. And I don't know if I want to circle back to this. Just 1 second. Yeah. No, I won't. Let's go further.
We're going to go further?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like there is something in your relationship with language, with what you call its kind of cosmic slowness, something that just goes in, and that has to do with, I feel like, I can be wrong, but I feel like your relationship to language has something to do with self-revelation, but also with acceptance of oneself, of the others, of life, of things that are intangible. And that's not a question, but I would love to hear you about all those languages because the more languages you speak or you write or you read as a writer, then the more vast is your experience of the world, and then you can just translate it in a very different way. So, yeah.
I love that as a concept, and I also feel like I know so few languages.
Well, you look very smart with this book.
I look smart and stuff like, and after my very convoluted definition of Métis and Michif, I encourage everyone to go on the internet and find real definitions of that, because I love love language. I love French words. I have a little bit of romance with French culture in this book. Michif, the French part of Michif culture in particular. I love Michif words. I love Anishinaabe-Moan. Those are the languages I've kind of floated to in my lifetime. And my ancestors would have spoken all of these languages and then some. You know, like it was very common for someone of maybe my great-great-grandmother's era to have spoken like 5 different languages and trading languages and everything. All of us, you know, like we come from so many languages, and now I feel like as a descendant, I am not living up to that. But I love looking at the words, and I seem to play with this a lot, of looking at these singular words, particularly in Anishinaabe-Moan and Michif, where because these indigenous languages are verb-heavy languages. Yep. They're active languages. I'm sure there's better technical terms for it other than they have a lot of verbs. And it's always action. It's never like, you know, snow. It's melting snow or spring melting snow or, you know, ice making snow. Like there's always this story behind something. And I feel like as I explore individual words, like in this book, there's a beautiful, one of the final poems is called, this Cree word called peatek. And peatek literally means walk softly. And it's not only like walk softly in the sense of shh, settle down, but it's a life lesson of walking softly on the earth, you know, not leaving anything behind, you know, not causing disruption. And I love that as just, that whole word is a poem, you know? So I really like kind of focusing on that, the minute part, the tiny part of language, you know, maybe as an excuse for being so bad at the rest of it.
Well, then let's get into Romance. Let's move away from that. Let's get into French. Then. Yeah. There's a big romance there. Would you read, please, the poem on page 72, 73, and then we can just, I don't know, bathe in it.
Bathe in this poem. Okay. This poem is my funny poem of the book.
That's the only one.
It's the only one. It's the only place. It was told on a trip to Paris when I was experiencing heartbreak, and I was thinking of that's where it starts.
Yeah.
And whenever I visit Quebec and France, I'm always thinking of my community's relationship to French culture and how we're very akin and cousins. And I was also thinking about what my uncle was telling me about how we didn't speak French, we spoke Michif. Yeah. And so what I learned, and as I was learning Michif, I learned that that's why my accent is the way it is. Because it sounds like a bad accent to say something in Michif. And so something like merci is marci. Something like the word for one of the words for hello is bonjour. And that's not only a play on bonjour, but it's also a play on the Anishinaabe word boujou, which is a greeting word. So it's the both plays. So whenever, so something like, I wrote a book called The Girl and the Wolf, and I wrote that specifically so it would get translated into Michif, and it would have been La fille et le loup. So it almost sounds like an English language, like a Franglish accent, but it's actually an Ojibwe or a Cree accent because it's rougher. But it plays so lovely. And I always thought I spoke bad French, but apparently I speak great Michif. Haha. I have really long-winded explanations for everything. And another really long title. So this poem is called Girl at Cafe in Rain at Sunset, Smoking Cigarette with Long Marble Holder, Writing Poetry. I love the French. The unironic way their poets talk about sorrow, love, despair, desire, their precious, precious hearts. My heart is broken. Long live my heart. Michif affinity to French, more taught than felt, yet there is something in the coal eyes, spontaneous bangs, languid, sexy depressions. I am so French sometimes. Stop trying to make French happen. Mamera loved all things French, English, went to Montreal whenever she could. Her sister lived there. They sat on stoops of St. Catherine's, whispered truth, gossiped, despaired over their love, husbands, waved off children and cigarette smoke, no holders. Undoubtedly, ma mère corrected her accent when she went there, 'cause y'all make fun of it. She coded before coding was cool. The elder has passed. Long live the elder. I want to live on the other side of this wreckage. I want to sip things, look fulfilled. I want to nap gloriously on a chaise lounge in the sun with a book slipping from my fingers to the floor. I want to appropriately mourn torrid affairs, only to gracefully stumble to the next. Prop my feet on a woven bistro chair while old men tell me stories all afternoon, not noticing how I gaze into the middle distance and say nothing. If interrupted, I will comment on the brilliant architecture, but really I am thinking of a boy who made me unmade. Oh wait, I do that. You said do. I want to walk in the rain all night, face turned up to where the stars are, just behind those clouds. I can feel them. French is dead. Long live Michif.
So I won't trap you in the corner with this question. I'm just going to give the same information I gave to you to the audience.
Okay.
When I was reading this poem, it made me think like immediately about Laurie Jean-Louis that maybe you've read. She has this very powerful, beautiful book that is called La Femme sans couleur at Mémoire d'Encrier. Probably you can find it on the other side of the street tomorrow from 10 to 5:30. And she wrote this beautiful poem playing with this Speak White of Michel Lalonde. And then she has this very powerful verse where she writes in English and in French, French, is it French or white? Yes. French is a dead language, il n'en reste que les silences. And I just felt like all this was very interconnected in the idea of being a woman that is not white throughout Canada. And I'm not going to go further than that. I just think you should read that book, you should read that poem, and you should read it aloud because it's crazy, powerful, beautiful, and really echoed what you just read. Time is flying. And we're coming to an end, and that's stupid. Because, like, I want to ask you. So that's stupid.
It's
yeah,
so
can
stupid.
I say? Yeah, time is so stupid. That's a bad concept. Bad concept. Really
Bad. Down with time.
But before we go, and because there is nothing after us, I would just like to ask this one question that maybe you don't have an answer to. But you said that you took almost 6 years between the poetry books. You also said that poetry is what comes first to you. And so when you get one out, what do you wish for them? What do you wish for them to be in the world? How do you want them to go through people? Or just what do you wish for them, how they change you? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I really gave up a long time ago. As much as I talk about control in the book quite a bit, actually, I don't think I have any control over what happens to a book after it's out in the world. I don't think any of us do. I think that I'm a big believer in this saying that we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. And I really think that applies particularly to art, all art forms. You know, what we interpret in art is so often not what it is. It's what we are. So if something speaks to you, it's really a matter of where you are in your life and what you're looking for. Like attracts like, and we want to learn. We also want to really be validated, which is a really convoluted way of saying, like, I don't prescribe morals to what I write. I kind of tried to do my very, very best to get out my meaning. I feel obsessed with being understood and edit everything within an inch of its life to be like, I am being clear. And then you put it out into the world and no one gets it. Which is fine. That's what it is. That's what writing is. And I try my best. And also I also know you have to let it go.
So we're just letting it go. And I'm sure that people do agree that you are quite smart and also amazing. So first of all, Katherena, merci. Thank you so much for this time. Few things I have to say before we leave. Katherena will be around, and since the book fair is closed, if you want to have your books signed or your chest, whatever, this is being recorded. I just stopped talking. Anyway, she is there for everything. So she will be around. Also, switching to French, les rencontres, évidemment, se poursuivent demain. Demain matin, à 9h, vous pouvez prendre un croissant avec Virginia Pessimapeo Bordeaux au Café Smith à Limoilou sur la 3e avenue. Je vous invite à me retrouver moi-même ici avec Maya Cousineau-Molène demain matin pour une rencontre et autour de son nouveau recueil pour chaque perle offerte. Et bien sûr, la foire se poursuit de l'autre côté au Morin Center. Merci, Tiawan Kine, et thank you so much for being here. And just get curious and get the books. Thank you.